Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity and Love. Absolutely fantabulous guests the world over with stellar backgrounds. And I'm not kidding, they're on their unique life path like we all can be. Sometimes we get a little lost on that. But they've also gone through some sort of transformation or experience in which they are turning around and helping others. So we've had a White House physician to the US president. We've had another doctor who runs refugee camps all over the world, a Delta Force operator, tons of healers, probably 50 show hosts, New York Times bestsellers, best-selling authors, Amazon best-selling authors, you name it, journalists, Good Morning America reporter, a CNBC anchor out of London, you name it. So today, with no exception, we've got from Auckland, New Zealand, Veda Austin. She is just fantabulous. Again, excited to have her on. She's all about water. She's all about love, messages of hope and joy. She does research, but she also does speaking engagements all over. So coming up, Glastonbury, Amsterdam, UK, Europe, and so on. She's got just wonderful messages for us. Vita, I'd like to welcome you to the show, Angels, Positivity, and Love. It's great to have you here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
Can you talk to us? How did you get started on all this? What happened? Where were you? Was this high school that you got the fascination with water, energy, life, the universe, how big everything is? Was it university? Was it after that?
People ask me this question all the time, and I think we overlook how connected we are with water every single moment of our lives. But the fascination, I suppose, began after a healing experience that I had with a unique water here in New Zealand. It's artisan water. And I had been in a horrendous car accident over 20 years ago. And we went under a 7-ton truck, rolled twice. The driver died immediately. And it is still considered one of the worst accidents in New Zealand where someone actually managed to survive. And over the course of 20 years, I had 8 surgeries, mostly for bowel surgery, where the seatbelt had crushed my internal organs and my collarbone was shattered. And then I also had stage 4 endometriosis, so I had to have various operations for that. But on the last surgery, I went in for a third bowel resection. And I woke up and the doctors were standing around me and they were saying, "Oh, you didn't recover well. And you have showers of blood clots in your lungs now. And you might have to be on warfarin for the rest of your life, which is a blood thinner." And I was in my early 20s. I was outside of car accident related issues. I was always fit, healthy, well. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do drugs, I was vegetarian. I was doing all of the things. So it just surprised me to hear that so much. And so they said, "Look, you're going to die if you don't do this." So I took warfarin for around 4 months until I had a clear chest x-ray. And I made a decision then for myself to stop, to stop taking it. And that's not any medical advice whatsoever to anybody. That was my personal decision based off um, knowing, speaking to some doctors, um, knowing my body could heal was a big one because 3 doctors had told me I would never be able to have children after my car accidents, and I'd literally had a child for every doctor that told me I couldn't. So I knew that just because somebody tells me something about my body doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be true. So I had an ability to just put something on the shelf. Not to say that they're doing their job, but I just didn't really absorb it all. I just let it be. That's been a wonderful gift I've had over the many years. And so I kind of knew inside of me that my body could become well and healthy. And so I ended up speaking to a friend of mine who is a medical doctor, but he also practices Ayurvedic medicine. And he told me, and it was an interesting off the record topic, because when he said off the record, I'm like, "Oh, why? Why does this have to be off the record?" And he said, "Well, if you just find a natural emphasis on natural," and he was not talking about an ionized water, he's talking about a natural high pH water or alkaline water It might help my body come back into balance. I've written a whole little book actually on this whole experience, which I've never published yet. I will at some point, but there's lots more to all of it. But the long story short is that I ended up trialing my body on 2-week trials of naturally alkaline water, and it's easy to find in New Zealand. You know, that's a water over a pH of 7 or power or potential of hydrogen. And we have springs everywhere. Most springs are naturally alkaline. So I went to different springs. I found different bottled waters. I trialed different types of water. And other than feeling hydrated, I didn't notice much, and I didn't even know what I was looking for, if I was looking for anything other than feeling good. The hard part about being in this meat suit is that we can't see the inner workings of the fluid dynamic within us. So after a while, and by this time I had a wellness center because I have some gifts of healing, and a lady came to me and she said, I know this old guy who's got his own private source of water. It's 9.9 coming straight out of the ground. And he's only giving it to cancer patients, and maybe you want to try it. So I rang him. He gave me a month's worth of water to try. And on day 3, I noticed a real change in bowel motions, which I'd had bowel surgery. So things were like looking good, I suppose, if they can look good in that arena. But it is a real indicator of our internal health, going to the bathroom. There are so many people sitting on the toilet trying to push out a pebble for an hour, and that's so many more people than you might imagine. So, and a big cause of that, not the only cause, but a big cause is dehydration. People are choosing not to drink water, but prefer to drink other things that, in quote unquote, taste better because they've got so used to so much sugary drinks and coffees and teas, and they think it's liquid, therefore they think it's water. So on day 10, I noticed all these bumps coming up along my arm and jaw on the right side of my body that were really painful. And I was like, what is going on? I knew my body was purging, but I didn't really know exactly what, because when I ran my finger across the side of my arm, it felt so sharp. And I'm like, there's something in here. I can feel it. So I ended up getting these tweezers and pulled this little shard of green glass out of my arm. And between day 10 and 12, I pulled 27 pieces of green glass out of my arm and jaw that had been in there since the car accident 20 years prior. Because the man who died owned a nightclub, and in the back of the car there were crates of Steinlager beer, which is a lager inside of a green glass bottle. And when the car rolled, my right side got more green glass and my left side got more windscreen. And the nurses had spent 3 days picking all the glass out of my body, but they didn't get it all. But I didn't even realize there was so much still in there. So my first question, and it was quite visual, it was a lot, like doing that and having people help me pull all this glass out, but it had come to the surface, and how did it do that? Like, that was my question. The only thing I'd done different, I hadn't changed my diet, skincare, any of these different things. I just drunk a different type of water. So what made it different was my question. That then led me on to looking at an analysis, which is like, well, when you look at an analysis, all you're really seeing is what water holds. It had a high bicarb, which made it more alkaline. It had a reasonable amount of silica. It had a nice, chemical compound, but I kept thinking there must be more. And then I'm thinking, well, when I look at an analysis, all I'm looking at is what water holds, not what water is. So what is water? There's been a very big question for me. And that led on to, well, if you ask a scientist, they're going to tell you it's H2O. But I remember somebody once said to me, well, the two hydrogens are feminine in the mode of levity, and the large oxygen is masculine in the mode of gravity, and together they create balance and liquid water on Earth. But, as I've been working in the field of water for the last 10 years, as a lover of water, as a researcher, weaving science, art, and consciousness together, I've come to understand through lots of research that there was a scientist that wrote that water is actually only one part matter, and that matter is the hydrogens and oxygen. The rest is photonic light. So water is really a lighthouse. And that means that by molecular count, not by volume, we're 99% water. Our our eye lens is literally 99% water, which means we see the world through the lens of water. So that, in other terms, means that there's more water molecules in our bodies than stars in the Milky Way. And since lots of people don't seem to know how many that is, there are more water molecules in our bodies than every single person on the surface of Earth. And all of those water molecules, each and every one, is mostly light. So that from there led on to becoming much more investigative around the science of water and the new science of water. And you can't kind of go too far without hearing about the idea that water memory is a term that is used quite regularly. And so I saw Emoto's work, of course, and although he was not embraced by the scientific community, he did really open the door for people to see themselves as bodies of water, sensitive to thoughts, sounds, words, prayers, environment. And his work was very, very visual. And like the picture you see there, it was like a flash frozen ice crystal. Um, and his work was very contrasting. So he would show pictures of gratitude compared to some, you know, different, like I hate you or something like that. I love you or I hate you. That's my very old book. Goodness, I haven't seen that in a long time. And so, so we know about Emoto's work, and he didn't have enough controls or repeatability for the scientific community. And he chose the best photos to share what he was saying. And he was always open about that. The second person who inspired me, probably even a little bit more, just because I'm an artist and I love, I'm multifaceted as we all are. So a little background. So I worked professionally as an oil painter for many, many years, but I also was studying to become a archaeologist. So I love the ancient mysteries. I'm a researcher, and an artist and a mother. So, a lot of different things throughout my life. And I as I'm going through looking at different people's work, and quite back then there wasn't a lot to see in the area of visual water storing information and sharing it, or water memory. But Laurent Coster is a French microscopic photographer, and he was taking photographs of water and seeing, and he was using the microscope in a similar way to Emoto, flash freezing the water, photographing the ice crystals. But not only did he see geometries, but he saw pictures. So he was seeing smiley faces looking back at him after smiling at the water prior to freezing. He was seeing perfect hearts in the ice. He was seeing cats because they'd just got a cat. He was seeing all different kinds of imagery. And so he was really quite remarkable. And when you see the pictures that he has taken and has sent to me, they're truly remarkable. So there's a difference between seeing um, imagery and well, art, really, if you will, and geometries. So sacred geometry is there. It makes up all of the universe, and it's always there. We're not taking anything away from that. But artistic expression is a very sophisticated way of communicating. So, you go back and look in cave painting times, that's how we got to understand what they were thinking, feeling, seeing. And it stood the test of time. And so when you're starting to see art in water, that was really intriguing to me. And the third person who inspired me to start my work, and really now it's been a decade of research, of photography, working in the area of crystallography, which is just a fancy way of saying that I photograph ice at a specific stage of freezing after it's been inspired some way prior to freezing and see imagery relative to that influence in the ice. So there was a man called Thomas Hieronymus. Thomas was a radionic engineer, and he went into a Parisian meat market on a very cold day and observed that the freshly placed organs of an animal appeared to be affecting the way the frost froze on the glass behind where they were placed. For example, the frost would freeze into the shape of a liver organ above a liver organ, and so on and so forth. And his hypothesis was there seemed to be some kind of life force energy still emanating out of these organs, even though they were no longer attached to an animal. And he put that down to there being water in the blood. And water is always in communication with itself in one form or another. So the water in the blood, he thought, was sharing information with the water in the air of its form, and the water in the air, as it hit the glass, took on the form of that information. What was interesting is that he was seeing it with his naked eye. And that inspired me because 10 years ago I wasn't working microscopically. And so I thought, well, the secret seems to be in the freezing where the unseen becomes seen. And so I decided that I would try for myself to see if this was really a real thing. So I had a Petri dish because I was working on another project for someone else. So it was a glass Petri dish. I put some of the water that helped to heal me in there, and there was a bit of fluff floating around in the water. I was thinking I was going to project a thought, but before I did that, there was this fluff. So I pulled the fluff out with my hand, and I thought, oh, I wonder if my hand will have any impact on the water's quote unquote memory. So I thought, well, that thought will do, and I shoved it in the freezer with the peas and broccoli and everything else. Forgot about it. This was a long time ago when I used to freeze water solid. I haven't done that in 9 years. But hours later, I pulled it out, held it up to the light, and I took my very first ice photo. And the image in the ice was an undeniable hand. It looked like an X-ray of my hand. It took up half the dish, the dish is 10 centimeters big, so it was 5 centimeters big. It was a large hand, macroscopically huge, actually. So I showed my son and said, what does this look like? And he said, it looked like a hand. And I was kind of shocked, really, because I wasn't expecting to see that at all. And that led on to a constant inquiry and whereby I would go to the ocean and freeze a thin layer and thought, well, if I see something relative to the ocean, then this isn't random. And I saw this incredible fish with gills and the shape and a round eye and tail and everything. And I continued to do that for about a year. And over the course of that year, I became more and more familiar with the new science of water and the fourth phase of water, which is more like a gel or liquid. And then I started to become curious, like when is the water freezing? And I ended up realizing that around 5 minutes and 20 seconds, it's different with every person's freezer, and different waters freeze at different times. But about that for me, there's liquid on top and ice underneath. Because I was wondering when it was beginning, the formative ice was actually forming. So I took the dish out, took the liquid away, and I now had a quantum leap of information and clarity of imagery compared to when I began. And that is my technique now. That is how I observe and photograph thousands and thousands and thousands of photos of water responding in a way in which appears to be intelligent.
Wow. And talk to us about the upcoming tour. So I want to jump a little bit and we're going to come right back to this. You're going to be like in Amsterdam, Glastonbury, many other places, Europe and the UK. You have groups of people. You already sold out on some of those. We'll call it a workshop, speaking engagement, whatever you want to call it. Can you talk to us about why is the audience signing up? They're so interested. This isn't the first time you've done this. Can you talk to us about what they hear about and what you show when you do these?
Well, each one is slightly different. For the ones coming up, like there's one in Painshall, which is where they filmed a lot of Bridgerton, and there's like a crystal grotto cave in there with with giant crystals and stalagmites and stalactites, which seems so crazy in the middle of Kent. So we found some really cool locations, and with that one, we were invited by a number of people who have a focus on homeopathy. So they've asked me, could you focus a little bit on what you've done around homeopathy, and but it's not going to be all on homeopathy. I am going to share a lot of the other things that are in my new book. My new book is called The Living Language of Water. So I share all of my work, my studies with water throughout that entire book. So I choose some of the more popular ones. And it looks like this. And it's a big, heavy book. It's got over 1,500 photos, over 300 pages, and it covers the science, the art, the spirit. There's even a chapter called Water and God. It goes into water and memory, the ideas and thoughts of the indigenous. Um, so many examples of my work, and so it's a book tour. This is the first time I've done my book tour because my book is only just launched, and so then we're kind of going around all these different areas where we've been invited a lot by community. And so they've like, oh, could you focus on spirit? We're really interested in how water relates to spirit. And so I share my thoughts and investigations around that. And, I think people find that my work, waters work with me. I don't want to take all the credit for it. Water is doing all the work here. I get to photograph it. I get to have a relationship based on just deep love and fun. You talk about having fun and having a smile and telling some dad jokes and stuff. Well, I'm in the what I would call family relationship. Occasionally, it feels even deep, maybe more intimate as well. But a family relationship with water whereby I don't need, and I haven't felt any need to be anything that I'm not. I know water sees everything I am, all my idiosyncrasies, all my thoughts and fears and stuff. I can't, I am transparent in the face of water. And so there is no point in me trying to create spaces which just seem like action. It just seems like I'm just trying too hard. I don't feel the need to, although occasionally I do because I do want to. But I live in a household where there's children running around and there's, lawnmowers going all the time. I swear New Zealand's like the land of a million lawnmowers. They all come out at the same time. And, there's always stuff going on. And so I'm working with water, not in the way where I feel like I have to create these special spaces to make it work, but because we're in a relationship, family relationship. They know who you are, they know what you look like with no makeup on, your hair a mess, nobody cares, they just love you because you're you, and you're there, and you show up every day. And with water, it's like that too. The only time water has really not designed with me, and there's been two times. Very rarely, but occasionally, because I'm human, I get angry and frustrated. So water won't design any imagery. It won't design, not out of judgment, because I don't see water ever being in judgment, but because it doesn't resonate at that frequency outside of a body. It's interesting. And so then the other one is where years ago somebody asked me if I could deceive water, if I could trick it. And it seemed like such a random thing, but they were so persistent. And so I'm like, "Oh," and I think they had a reason behind asking that question. I've come to understand a few things from having had done this in a positive way. So, I mean, there's always a reason behind everything. But um, I thought, okay, well, I'll try. I wouldn't do it now. What happened afterwards was so freaky to me. And so I ended up saying to the water, and I know that part might sound strange, but in all honesty, there's no reason why I can't do anything. There's nothing stopping me from trying anything. After seeing imagery from photographs, from putting flowers in water and removing them, from literally using photos of different people's faces and seeing those individual faces show up in the eyes, from using music and seeing that water loves to design words coming from music, and like Stairway to Heaven shows stairways, for example. There's no reason why I wouldn't ask a question at this point. So I simply said to the water, please show me something that's really incredible, something so beautiful that's just between me and you. I won't share it, it'll just be our conversation privately, which was a lie, but I immediately put it into the freezer. And I was feeling guiltier and guiltier and guiltier. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this for this person. This is just not cool. Like, I know this is bad. Like, I was feeling it in my chest, this tightness in my chest. I felt so horrible. And water is, again, not in judgment. It's important for us to even remember that, because we see everything with the human lens. And so and there's always a bigger picture. But I was using spring water, which has a signature pattern. So when people use my technique, they'll see one of three things: a signature pattern, which shows you a pattern relative to the type of water it is. Spring water looks a certain way, rainwater, tap water, municipal tap water, I mean. And then you might see art, and I always say that art is the heart of water. And then you might see hydroglyphs, and hydroglyphs are separate to all of them. A hydroglyph is a symbol, essentially in ice, that must have repeated at least 50 times to say that I have won. And I use words, written words, as an influence prior to freezing. And I use the same word in lots of languages. I have a team around the world, and we keep seeing the same symbol appear. So it's a very repeatable thing I do there, but it also allows us to see that there is so much, so much more than we could ever imagined, and that there are multiple words for each symbol, and we're learning more and more of those layers of meaning. It's truly amazing. I'm doing a talk in a scientific forum about hydroglyphs because of the amount of repeatability. But back to the freezer. And so I was using spring water, which usually would form a gorgeous hexagonal pattern. And I was thinking, oh my God, it's going to be completely like, it's disordered. And I was like nervous to even take it out. So I took it out, I held it up to the light and took a photograph. And there was a little disorder, but there were two letters in the ice. And the letters were big. And the letters were made a word. And that word was no, N-O. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm never doing that again. And for a week after that, water wouldn't play with me. And I'm like, I've ruined it. It was really it's very difficult when you have this relationship, and it's something you look forward to doing every day, and then all of a sudden nothing works. It's not doing it. And I had to go through my own forgiveness. It wasn't about water forgiving me. It was about the water in me forgiving me. And so I kind of ended up getting to a point where I'm like, I had to forgive myself about that, and stop blaming the other person for encouraging me to do it, and take it on and just say, well, there must have been a greater meaning for this. And I'm now talking about it, because the fact that water showed me something so sophisticated within that, and literally was like a parent at that moment, which is why I say that it's like we switch sometimes from being being parents and children, to being lover and beloved, to being friends. So in that moment, I was the child and water was the parent, and parent needed to take a moment, and so did I. until I learnt how to forgive myself. And that is one of the wonderful things, of the many, many things that water has taught me, is is that water, I think, is a mirror of the divine. And it is it's just not, it doesn't, it shows us this incredible humility and non-judgment. Um, I recently was asked this question, and I'll read it. It's on over on Instagram, and um, this person was kind of asking a common question, of which I think is quite good to address sometimes, because they were saying, like in the last few podcasts, I've been asked this, and so the person was said, "Dearest Veda, how come water seems to respond so quickly, consciously, and distinctively in these experiments? But when all the nefarious leaders of the world do consistently evil things, why doesn't all of the water in their bodies have a reaction that inhibits the functioning of their bodies in some short or long-term way?" And a lot of people ask these kinds of questions to me, and this is how I answered it. And it kind of just came to me. And I said, water is not in judgment. It goes wherever there is life. It doesn't resist anyone who is thirsty, even if that person has done terrible things. It reflects whosoever looks upon it. There have been and are still horrific things happening by the hand of man. But water is not the hand, it is the seed of hope that lies within man so that change may happen. And when water is not inside of a body, and it's outside of a body, it is free from the way in which we think, the fears that we have, but it also is more of an observer. And we have the ability to be an active participant as well as an observer. And I think that that's where the spirit ties in. There's, I think that we as people, we all have a spark, an essence within us that some people would call soul or spirit or subtle body. And I think that the tether of that soul to the body is electrical charge. And all around us, there is the air, which gets so overlooked. And we as human beings and any life form gives off some electrical charge, which can be measured by heart math. It's not woo-woo. And the water in the air is attracted to electrical charge. So if you imagine a spider web covered in water droplets, it's just an analogy, but I imagine that we have like this giant liquid antenna, liquid crystal antenna all around us, essentially picking up on the information in the air and bringing it into our intuition so that we receive it and understand it, and then give it back out again so that people feel our energy. And then when the spirit is moving further afield, I've spoken to so many people now. I just did a webinar about people who have had near-death experiences, and many of them talk about the sense of rising, looking down upon their body with no attachment to it, and then moving on to have a life review or something else. But that feeling of rising, in terms of water, we don't just talk about liquid. We have a liquid, solid, gas, and then a gel or plasma. And there's subtle layers in every single one of those. There's over 300 types of ice, for example, and there's millions of so many subtleties within each one of those. So what we know about water is just a drop in the ocean, if that, which means that we only know that much of ourselves. But moving on, the this idea that the spirit is a stage of water, like a vibrational vapor, for example. And as water, if you imagine a gas, as a gas expands, it cools, which could be why people feel spirit as cold. And so if the spirit leaves the body, the way in which it can come back, if somebody has a near-death experiences and come back into their body, is probably because there's some weak electrical charge. When they're using the defibrillator, they're trying to get the charge back into the body. But I was speaking to Dr. Gerald Pollack, who's become a dear friend of mine, and it's his conference I'm speaking at in Amsterdam, not Amsterdam, sorry, in Lisbon this year, the water conference. And he was on one of my webinars, and he was saying that his one of his students or the people working with him they were trying to see if fourth phase water, or exclusion zone water as they call it, would drop when vital signs dropped, when something became dead. So they used, now I don't like people using animals in anything, but they got an egg, which the baby chick was just starting to form. It hadn't formed, properly yet. And so at about 4 days or whatever it was, I think that's what it was, they stopped the heartbeat and they measured the fourth phase water drop along with all the other things, but it didn't drop all the way. When they put infrared light beside it, it went all the way back up again, and it took hours until it came back down. And what they said, and what Jerry said on that thing, is that we might need to reconsider when exactly somebody's dead based on the fact that there is still movement of water in the body. And where there's movement, there's some form of charge, because we're not distilled water, we're fresh water, we're like an ocean. So if there is any form of movement, there is the chance, I think, that the spirit can come back into the body on the electrical charge highway, if you will. That's some musings that I've had over the many years of really studying and looking into ancient wisdoms as well as my own original thinking and some of the science. And I do think there will come a time in the not too distant future where we can actually see this other stage of water leaving the body upon either death or an out-of-body experience. I think that would be easier to measure well, I don't know. I'm going ahead of myself there, but I do think that's a really interesting idea. And my father's native New Zealand Maori, and there is a word called wairua for spirit. And wai is water and urua is two, and there's so much more to that word, but rudimentarily, it's two waters, the physical and spiritual waters. And why is it that spirit would be a physical water and a spiritual water? It's like whilst you are in spirit, there's always a connection to the waters. And Maori believe that our ancestors are in the water and that we need to protect it. There's even a saying which says, I am the river and the river is me. Like there's no difference. And the health of the river reflects the health of the people. I mean, these are very big things, very big concepts, very big things to say. And they're entrained within the ancient way of thinking and the indigenous way of thinking around the world. My friend Kalani Souza from Hawaii, beautiful man, sending him so much love and prayers. He has not been well. And he always would say, water isn't a resource, it's a relative. And so, yes, so there's so much there.
If we go big picture, universe, eternal questions for mankind, only been asked a few thousand years. Is love the fabric of the universe?
Yeah, I think so. I do think so. And because love, I mean, it's just, I think it's hard when we use words. My daughter and I yesterday, we went for a walk in the evening. We go and we visit the eels down at the stream, not far from here. Quite often we'll end up there and talk to the eels. And so she and I were talking, we were saying, oh, imagine, what it's like for a baby, because she was talking about how she wanted to do babysitting. And we were saying, well, she was like, imagine what it is for a baby where they can't use words. So how do they think? We think in this way in which we've been taught to use words, but how do babies think? And I said, well, I think babies just know. They're they are so wise that they have a knowing. So when they see a tree, it's like there's a relationship with the tree. There's a relationship with everything, rather than it's being broken apart and put into words and labeled. Um, another way of feeling the world and experiencing the world. And we use this word love, and to each and every person, love means something different. We have an idea. Word is like a concept, but as soon as we've kind of thrown a word out there, it's minimized it to it meaning something specific to each person, right? So, love being the fabric of the universe, that could be utter bollocks for somebody and absolutely right for somebody. But I think if we use the word love, and you kind of come back into, well, this feeling, when you were a little baby, what did you understand love to be? What is love is a good question. And I think animals know, like, especially you see dogs. I have this thing where I watch all these shows where these poor dogs have just been abandoned, and then people go and save them, and I watch a lot of that, and they always seem to just come back around into feeling well and happy and healthy again, because that person has given them love. So I think, someone once said to me, what if water is expressing its consciousness through us and every living thing to observe itself from every different perspective? Now, I would say that it's not so much about love giving love outside. It's more of like a self-love. And self-love is more around learning about yourself. And there's so much to learn, but we're constantly comparing ourselves to everybody else, so we don't get to learn what it is, the unique factors that we are. So love is one word, which I think is not possibly the word I would use. I think consciousness is perhaps more of the fabric of the universe. But I think that love, consciousness, and water, and love in the purest of senses, so intertwined that they know each other so intimately because they work together all the time. I think we've made things so complicated, and I think things are actually really simple. And with water, no one can deny that we need it to survive, that this world needs water to survive. We're really willing to say that water is life, but not many are willing to even suggest that water could be alive. And I do think that water is a living life force energy, where there is also, and I also think it is a universal truth, because wherever I look, whatever tributary I go down in relationship to whatever it is, and I apply water to it, there is a truth that overrides. There is something of which gives me an aha moment. And when you find that, whether it's from money to, life after death, when you find that there's water can apply to all these areas, then I do think you've found yourself a universal truth. So, and it's a long-winded way of answering that, to the best of my ability anyway.
Let's step away from science for a second and just talk about a personal experience along the way. You've had a long journey where you can't explain what happened. It might have been a person, an angel in human form. It might have been just that serendipitous synchronicity thing. You turned around, maybe it was a person, they're gone, or it was an object or something that, again, the brain, the logos, the reason, the ego, the psyche, intellect can't allow for. But your heart knows something different and knows that it somehow is closer to truth in the universe. It doesn't have to be explained. Do you have one of those that you could share with us that still recollect on from time to time?
I mean, there's been there's been several, but I think a one of which I just think is just I always accepted it. This was mum. Was where because my mum she passed away in 1999, and she was like my best friend, right? She really was my best friend. And when she passed over, I had 2 weeks of um, feeling her with me the whole time. Like literally felt like she was with me. I could feel her energy. I even remembered thinking, gosh, I can do this. I can do this. I feel her. Like I can't explain how, but I know she's with me. I can feel it so strong. And I spoke at her funeral. I was getting things in order. I mean, I was devastated, but I could feel her. I was managing to do everything I needed to do because I could literally feel her. And then I had a dream after week 2. And this was back when I lived in the old house. And I was in the bedroom that I had been in for 20 years or something. And so, and I had a picture in my bedroom at that time of my teacher from India. And in my dream, I woke up and I'm in my bedroom in the dream. And mum is at the end of the bed. And I didn't have that thing where so many people, or many people, talk about where they feel like they like want to say something they never got to say. Mum and I were so close. We knew everything. Like she knew everything about me, and I didn't feel like I needed to say much. I was like, oh my God, it's so great to see you. I love you. All of these things, just the stuff I would normally have said to her. And but I know there's something really special about the fact that she's sitting at the end of my bed. And then in my dream, this alarm goes off, and I didn't have an alarm clock, but it was one of those very typical cartoon alarm clocks, with the two things. It's like Mickey Mouse ears, and it's like making, and she says, I can hear her, and she's telling me she has to go. And I'm like, no, 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 wait, wait, I'm going to turn the alarm off. And I'm like, wait, 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 turn the alarm off. And she's gone. And I can see she's gone into the picture of my teacher who'd also
Who was the
passed.
teacher?
His name is he's passed. His name was Sri Kripalu Maharaj. And she went into the picture, and the picture in my dream like became more crooked because she'd gone into it, and I was like crying. I'm like, no, 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 and I woke myself up crying because I didn't want her to go. And when I woke up and I turned the light on in my bedroom, my literally the picture of my teacher had was crooked, and it felt so real. And I think the hardest part for the next year, and maybe even nearly 2 years, was not feeling her as close, but knowing that she needed to go, and came and said goodbye. And now over the years, I feel her as close. At the moment I think of her, she's there. So I had to go through the grief, but it was one of those times where there's no logical way I could really explain how that all happened. But I mean, there's many things I couldn't logically say, but that's one of them anyway.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. We've reached that point in the show where I'm going to light some sage, blow it to you from where am I? In Texas, the United States to New Zealand, Auckland area. You'll catch what you catch. Now, just as a disclosure, I do this all the time on the show. We've already done it before the show, so we know we're kind of covered here. I think there's only 2 shows I've forgotten to do it because I was so excited about the guest. What am I going to do? I forget everything. And then there were 2 people who were, just more serious. You're not going to offer to do it then. And they did a great show. And I'll say love this way. Love is what allows us to appreciate all the contrast. And so who cares if you do it or don't do it? I'm going to light some sage, but if you're at home, you can use the schnoggin, but it's the Zen thing. It's seeing without seeing, hearing without hearing, using the schnoggin without using the schnoggin. Your heart is like water. It's already there. It's connected to everything. So just give yourself a break. And I do have one bit of just setting your intent. Ask the universe angels to get in here into your ball of light that's you, and to help you let go more, be out of your head into your heart if that's what you need to hear or feel. You may already be catching it as I light it, and now I'll try to make some smoke. And Vita, what are you getting in Auckland area? Sage?
Yes, very sage.
Good. And if anybody wants to get flowers, why settle for just ho-hum linear? Not that sage isn't amazing. And if you've been playing pickleball, your elbow's sore, have the sage smoke go there or dip it in some water, as Vita would say. Ask for healing from the universe. Air works as well. Ask for flowers, ask for ocean. Make this a triple tiered tiramisu with no calories. So ask for, you're getting sage, but why not get flowers? Why not get ocean? If you need to close your eyes or put your hands on your heart, whatever works for you, you can do the chubby checker or Elvis, anything that makes you laugh, let go. Are you getting anything else, Vita? Before the show, we did some extra. Right now, you're in the limelight. The recording is on. No pressure. Are you getting any flowers?
Oh, frangipani. It's always been one of the scents that I love so much from the islands. So yeah.
Nice. Oh, and you're getting asked two totally random small questions, like you're on a game show practically. Uh, the second one I'm going to mention first, but we're not getting to it yet. Can you talk to us about the different beaches, the bodies of water around the globe that you're like, oh my God, yes. And especially if some institute came in and said, we're going to fund you for, I can do this, 7 retreats around the globe, what would the 7, I imagine would have to be like, Greece, Africa, somewhere on the water, wherever, where would those 7 places be? But first, a pool company comes in and they say, we want to sponsor, we want to do 2 pools. We'll hedge a little. We're going to have 2 separate pools. You can choose any type of, I don't know how to say this, mechanical setup with the water. Like, in other words, what type of water do you want in the pool? Is it the normal chlorine? Is it ocean water? Pretend you're living smack on the edge of the ocean and they can just bring it in like they do in Newport, Rhode Island. Himalayan salt pool. There's probably other types of pools I'm not even aware of. What's the pool or the body of water you'd have built into your pool? What is the body of water that rocks a pool?
Well, definitely not the chlorinated type. I would not have that. I I would, if it was possible, I would be in a place where there was already a spring that was coming up. And so I would have the spring fill the pool. And so it would also be able to go back down into the ground somehow and go back. So it would be able to come up and then come back down again. So it was in constant flow. Um, I like the very natural waters the best that I can. I would probably choose from then this is only my personal preference, but I would probably choose like a spring water. I'd love to swim in the spring water. Um, I had this weird thing with seawater where if my body is fully immersed in it, I feel like I'm being stung by jellyfish. I've always had this as a small child, as I have quite a big electrical charge. I'm always one of those people that will zap you if I'm touching metal or something like that. Um, and I remember the first time when I was really young and I got knocked over by a wave, and I came running in. And I was with another lady, and I ran in screaming. I was like, "Mom, I got stung by jellyfish," because I couldn't explain the feeling. And she, I didn't have any marks on me, but it was this feeling of like being stung. And so it's made it like every now and then, occasionally it doesn't happen, but it often will. And the one time most recently where I found that it didn't happen was when I was in Tahiti, and I was in at Moorea, and I was actually able to swim there in the lagoon, which was just beautiful. But other than that, I've had some very interesting experiences in seawater. I had a drowning experience when I was nearly 14. And so I would probably, for my own, where I relax the most is in waters that are, streams. I just love being in streams. and as I'm so attracted to go into the ocean, and I've had so many crazy experiences there. So far as what happened when I drowned and what I said I saw after I'd done hypnotherapy many, many years later, because I couldn't remember anything.
Ooh, can you share just the location and then what you might have seen afterwards, if it's okay? You don't have to get into too much detail, but do you mind sharing that much?
I'll, yeah, I don't tend to.
Okay.
Um, but it was at a a beach along the west coast in New Zealand, and I used to go horse riding a lot. I ride a lot, and my friend's dad had taken us riding that time. We used to alternate between my stepfather and doing it and my friend's dad. And so he was taking the horses back, and my friend and I, we went over the sand dunes down to the beach. And normally we would leave. Normally we wouldn't go over to the beach too often because we're so exhausted because we go for a long ride. But for some reason we weren't able to have as long a ride as normal. And so we went down, and I was planning on just kind of mostly splashing around in the water because I would often have reservations about diving into the sea. And so at this particular beach, it got quite deep quite quickly. And so I wasn't so familiar with it. And so I'm like, oh, I better start moving towards the, beach again. So as I'm trying to move, I feel like there's something literally on around my ankle, not just like not just like gentle, but like literally yanking me down. And what I remember from it was that I remember seeing all these bubbles. My eyes were really hurting, and I was being yanked down really fast. And I had a lot of feelings that were mixed up in one. And just remember seeing the light kind of color of the above the ocean with the light coming through. It wasn't a really sunny day, so it's just light. And and then kind of this sound. And that was all I could tell anybody after they found my body. But my body had been missing for 3 hours, so I hadn't obviously drowned for that long, or I wouldn't be here. And the most logical explanation for the Coast Guard and stuff was that I must have swum, somehow felt myself being pulled down, somehow managed to get out, swum to a rock, clung, because there were many kind of rocks along there, clung to it, and waited until I felt like I could get back, and then swum and then drowned, and then they found me. That's the most logical explanation for people that people said. And when I was in the hospital, my mum came to see me and was telling me that they actually found two dead dolphins 200 meters up the beach, and that had been like slashed. And I remember, as much as it was upsetting that I couldn't remember anything, it was more upsetting than I heard about that. I couldn't speak for about 10 days after that because it upset me so, so much. And then I just didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to go in the sea anymore. I didn't want to think about it. It was really traumatic. And after then, I didn't think about it. I already felt unusual enough as it was because of various other things that have happened to me when I was little. And so that's why, I'm just going to be straight A student. Just let me just be whatever normal is. Many, 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 many years later, within the last 10 years, I mean, we're talking quite a lot of years now, um, someone said to me, well, don't you want to know what happened? And I'm like, I don't really know if I do. I was really resistant to knowing or even hearing what I might remember or say. So I was convinced to do some hypnotherapy, and it was it was recorded orderly, just the audio, which was just as well, because even though the hypnotherapist brought me out of it and said, you're going to remember everything and be calm and all of these things, it was like a dream. And the more I tried to grab onto it, the faster it would go. So all I had to go on was the audio after that, because and then the audio started to bring up some memories from me over the course of time, still bringing up little memories here and there. It could have very well been a near-death experience. It could have also been a possibility that it was a real experience. I lean into that, but you know, with my work, I'm trying to be a bridge between science, art, and consciousness. And a big piece of that for me is that I'm taken as seriously as some people are willing to take me. But I don't want to go too far one way or too far the other way. And so this story always feels a little bit too far the other way. Um, and it is what it is, but I tend to share it in more private settings, to be honest, because it is a private thing. But essentially, what I said was that I was pulled down by a being that felt like my brother. That's how he felt to me. He felt like my relative, but he looked a little different than you and me. I couldn't see everything. My eyes were hurting, and I could see his face because he had a bioluminescence around him. I couldn't see below him, just from here up. And I've drawn the picture even of what I saw, what he looked like. Mostly I remember what he felt like. And I could hear him, we could communicate, and he was asking, like, why are you drowning? Like, I couldn't understand because I wasn't supposed to. I was supposed to be like them somehow. And there's too much to explain about why that is and my eye surgery and all the rest of it. But anyway, and there were two beings behind me, and I could feel them there. And when they realized that I was actually drowning, they held my body, and I felt this pulling of my essence being taken out of my body, and it was being like a vacuum, being pulled into this vacuum. And it was like this vortex, this long, long, long vortex, which took my subtle body, I suppose, if you want to call it that, on this journey. And it was so fast. It was the fastest I've ever felt myself, or even imagined what fast is like. But it was so fast that there was no sound at all. It was complete silence. So even though I know I'm moving so fast, there's no noise whatsoever, which is a very weird feeling. It felt perfectly normal in the moment, but to explain it is very difficult. And then I popped up on the surface of water of an ocean, and I'm like on my back in this subtle body looking up. And the hypnotherapist is like saying, like, where are you? And I said something really random. I said that I was in the Hudson Valley, and I'd never been to the States. Like, I said I was in the Hudson Valley of all places, in the river or area. And so they're asking, like, when is it? And I said it was like the day before, which is this basically what I would say if I was living in America. New Zealand's a day ahead. And so I said that I saw these circles of round lights above me, and a vague outline of a kind of boomerang type of shape, I suppose. And I was just like, because I was trying to see the stars, but it was so big that kind of couldn't see them very well. And then I started to feel, and it wasn't scary. I wasn't scared or anything. And then I felt this pulling feeling again, like the vortex thing was going to happen again. But before it could happen, suddenly I knew it wasn't safe, and that there was just way too much going on, and I needed to go back. Whether if in a near-death experience the feeling was of the pulling back, needing to come back into the body because I was going to die otherwise, or something else. And then I was pulled back through this vortex, which again felt like just fast with no sound. But this time I was accompanied by 3 dolphins, and 2 of them stayed back and one of them was with me the whole time.
Mm.
And the two that stayed back, I think that's why I had that big reaction, because they didn't make it. And then I came back into my body, which was held in some kind of suspended space. I took a breath for the first time, and then I drowned, and they pushed my body up, and then I was found. And that's what I said. And I felt so guilty, like I was supposed to be with them, and that the greatest thing I can do now is to share wisdom about water, about salt, the marriage of salt and water, but also, the hydroglyphs are, from what I'm seeing, like a universal language, and that it's a way in which we can understand all life forms. So I do feel like there's something very special within that story. I still don't know what to make of it all, and I'm uncomfortable still talking about it. But it was an important piece to my story, of which I've kind of learning to embrace. And I hope one day that stinging sensation can go away, so I can actually really enjoy going in the ocean.
Thank you for sharing that. And uh, let's do this. I'm going to do something out of order. We're going to start wrapping it up soon, but we're going to take some steps with just some photographs of angels. But first, just to bring the vibe back to the most openness we can do, I'm going to tell one dad joke, just real easy dad joke. It's going to be Bert and Ernie, the Sesame Street characters. Nobody watching has to remember those guys. I'll even light sage again. Why not? So you don't have to remember who's who. They're interchangeable. Bert offers Ernie ice cream. What's Ernie say? Sure, Bert. And if the screen moves at all, my cat has returned behind the screen, so it'll look like an earthquake. But I will remove the cat. I might have to do it again. Catch a little sage, ask for flowers, ask for an extra feeling of relaxation, and just chill. And give me a thumbs up or a got it when you've got a little bit of sage. That'll be good enough. You've already done it. Okay, good. And then I'm going to put an angel named Joy up. She's the emotion joy ambassador communicator, kind of a constant. We do thinking, we've got this situation, that situation. My problem is, my drama is, I'm shocked there's gambling going on in this giant human casino up top. All any of us can do is 7% less thinking in a day, or flip that pancake. 7% more love, heart, letting go, more water. Um, with that, set your intent at home if you want. I'm going to put her photo up. You can treat her like a fireplace, but I don't mean fire, not like Bridgerton. Just feel what you can feel, sparkle. Think of more like a Disney film and you're 10 years old, you're excited. Here's Joy, and she'll bring you a flower smell. I'm not lighting sage. Catch some new flowers. Put your hand up, feel what you can feel, or just use your body. And then if anybody wants to ask her a question, Joy, what do I need to know in life right now? Hear a little whisper. It'll be your voice for 1 second. The second you let go, you hear a high, peppy 28-year-old voice. Vito, what are you getting from Joy? What are you feeling from Joy?
Um, I immediately started to smell Daphne, and Daphne's one of my favorite flowers. I first ever smelt Daphne when I was living in Japan, actually. So yeah, it's beautiful.
Awesome. And we did this before the show. So we kind of tested things out. And I just am going to compliment Vito right now. Super open, super incredible on a super path. And I use super 3 times. Yay. Okay, here's a Charlotte, everybody's favorite school teacher with words meant to help you expand. Um, if you like ancient Egypt, have her bring in an Egyptian incense. Remember your archaeology background. Have her bring in an Egyptian incense that hasn't been around for thousands of years, that just goes straight to your foundation. And you're like, oh my gosh, I could take some of that weekly. And then ask a private question, get an answer, get a hug. You can share what you want to share. If she says something for all of us, that'd be fantastic. And unofficially at home, if anybody needs extra help, you can put your hand on your heart. You can breathe more through your mouth, 1 millimeter through the mouth. Mouth breathing is just an extra way to let go. Think of it as a volume knob of just relaxing more. And what are you getting from Charlotte Vita?
It's just a feeling that's quite hard to explain, but just a really beautiful, warm feeling.
Yes. Okay. Just a few more. I've got hopefully our favorite of the show stealing the show, except you've already stolen the show. So it's Min, Angel, who's light waves of energy and water. I'm in a pool every day last year, this year, thanks to Angel saying you need to be in a pool. Look at the light waves of energy and water, feel it. So I'm in a pool. I'll be going to a pool after the show. Um, Here's Min. Silhouette. These are, I grabbed a Sure Shot camera in a panic 12 years ago, and I used to hand the camera to folks, but you can just look out your window and see directly. And people can do this jointly. So group seeing, I'm off the hook. But here's Min. She's a Pacific princess. Think Moana, the opening scene. She would have pushed the water back for that little girl to get the conch shells and stay dry, if anyone's seen the Disney movie. What are you getting from Min? And if you don't mind, have her, yeah. You've brought up so many themes today. Could she just take it where you left off, or the other way around? She's got a great insight for you for water, what we all need to know.
You're asking me?
Yeah, you get to do the listening.
Okay.
You're on the spot here. So what's Minnie got for you about water?
You know, the feeling I get when when I see the image and I feel the image of men that you're showing is in friendship for me. You know, it's not that it feels just as if a, a friend, and that is honestly where one of the best ways in which I can feel with water. I'm not trying to um I'm not trying to go in any more directions other than this is like two friends walking down a path together, and that's how it feels for me. You know, it's like there's so much wisdom and all of these things, and at the same time, sometimes the greatest lessons and joy that we get is in the company of the people we love. And I think those two kind of go together.
And I have one final photo for you. She's an angel named Heather. I think these are kind of arbitrary names over the long haul, but for now, Heather. And it's the word heart rearranged with extra letters. Think of her as an Amazonian goddess if you want. But people from South Africa get reminded she's very earth, and especially Africa, but also Amazon. I think she's got a lot of places here. But people who haven't been home to South Africa in a long time will be reminded of the soil, the properties, what they miss. Um, when people go surfing with their eyes shut, she makes perfect waves. People can shut their eyes and be in the same, not lucid dream, more interdimensional. You just have perfect waves, no sharks. You know how to surf like a pro. I can't explain it. 5 minutes of our time is 10 minutes over there, but you can see other people sitting in the same chair area or by Zoom. I've had two show hosts when I was the guest do it separately or jointly, one in California, one in Florida, see each other. Where I'm going with this is Heather is compassion. She makes hearts in her photos. I'll try to pull up another heart. But when people go surfing, they'll see her as a dolphin and they can chat with her like you're Aquaman. You just know how to talk with a dolphin, hear a dolphin. So she's a sweetheart. I've seen her in human form in Stockholm, Maui, Vegas, Austin, Texas, and New York City. And that's a really long story, so who cares? But you can, anybody at home who wants to meet angels on the street, just ask them for a really gentle introduction so you don't get too shocked and get flabbergasted for 3 days. But it'll be a loving experience. They're not here to, rock your world too much, just a lot of extra love. And ask a private question about something that you've brought up today. It could be about your mom. It could be about the water. It could be about the boomerang. It could be about your research. Get a private answer. You're not going to share it out loud. And we're going to have you just share something that's fun about the heart. She makes lots of hearts in her photos. There's another one. And I have a ton of misses as well, where I took the photo too soon, too late. But here's another heart. And just I'll do one more to make the point. Here's one more. So with your permission, if you want to close your eyes and see dolphins, hear from the dolphins that are just telling you a positive message so you never fret about dolphins again. Breathe through the mouth, let go. No try Yoda. I'm going to do Yoda's voice from Star Wars because when we hear something like that, we start laughing and then we get distracted. The intellect seizes on Yoda's voice. The heart gets to play. But if you don't mind leaving your eyes closed, I'm going to do Yoda's voice for folks. Breathe through your mouth. Hear something about dolphins. Play with dolphins for a second. But do share one heart message from Heather and everybody else to all of us. Here comes Yoda's voice. Do not. There is no try. And we have set a new record for podcast shows because not many people are going to do all this on a show. She's enjoying with her eyes shut. What did you get for us, Vita? You are done for the crazy stuff today, but what did you get for dolphins?
um, you know, I just got the way that they feel. You know, that I don't know if you've ever touched a dolphin, but that feeling that dolphins feel like, there's nothing quite like it. And yeah, there's some things that don't need words, but that feeling comes up for me whenever I think of dolphins and whenever I felt into what you were saying.
Hmm. Okay, you've done a lot of shows. You know how to wrap up a show. Leave us with some sweeping reminder about mankind, hope, joy. Remember, you're delivering messages of hope and joy to us all the time. That's the whole point of the tour, the book tour, and why people want you. You're in demand. What's the final reminder for us all as we're each on our own individual, unique journey?
You know, I think that one of the greatest things I've learned from water is that it's actually not judging us. We tend to go into this feeling of judgment of ourselves. But when you look at how water moves from a mountain all the way through all the tributaries, it's always going back to source. And I think of water not as a resource, but as source. And from what I've seen, that water reads our potentials. So when I put a sunflower seed into the water and then remove it and then freeze it, I don't see the seed. I see the outcome of the seed. I see the sunflower. Same with a flax seed. I see the flax pod, which is like the fruit of the flax. With an apple seed, I see the apple. So water is reading our greatest potential at all moments. And when I think about how much water we are made of, and I think about the fact that water is reading our greatest potential, not our worst, there is these, there are trillions of seeds of hope inside of us. Seeds just waiting to be seen half the time, to be observed, to be watered, to be given light at any given moment, to step into our potential. That means to me that we're never alone. We're never not seen, even when we feel like maybe nobody else understands us. Water knows us intimately well. And from what I've seen with my work is that water isn't just responding to consciousness. It's it's not reacting, it's responding. Sorry. It's no different than you in many ways. I think that sounds crazy to some people, like because we've taken it so much for granted. But the tears that we have when we cry, you know, in our greatest sorrow, our eyes are designed in such a way, our face is designed that out of the tear ducts, the tears roll around our cheeks, but they end up going back towards our mouth because they've been reordered and restructured to help heal our hearts. We are our own medicine. And I think that liquid crystal is the medicine of the future. And I have a lot of hope going forward because at the very, very least, I have felt for a long time that water was going to flood the earth again. It felt like that, like it was really rising, wanting to flood. And I felt into that. And I remember this time where water kind of explained it in whatever way it did. And it wasn't that it wants to flood the world, but it wants to flood the hearts of people. And that's this new wave, the new flood of water, consciousness, light, and love that I truly think is beginning to happen. And it only takes 2% of the world to have this feeling, have this change. There's only 2% on the surface of Earth. I'm not talking about primary water, the water inside the Earth's mantle. I'm not talking about that water. That's almost like a whole different water completely. But on the surface of Earth, there's only about 2% of that that's drinkable, that's not saline. And I think in proportion, we only need 2% of people on the surface of Earth to be able to fully appreciate what I've been saying about water and what many, many people have been, from indigenous, to ancient, that water is not a resource, it is source, and that there really is so much more there. And that little 2% can make such a huge wave of change upon the earth. And I think we're just about there. If not there already, we're already seeing changes. I'm seeing them all the time. And I feel like at least if I was to die tomorrow, I would have left enough opportunity for people to learn how to do all of this work that I've done themselves and take it far, far further than I ever have.
Beautiful. Veda Austin, thank you very much for being on Angels, Positivity and Love. You've been a treat, a delight, and an inspiration, not just in the show here, but you will be also influencing many more people in the future. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.